it's your CajunStork here with midwife Jamie from the Natural Birth House, and today we're going to talk about avenues for midwifery. I am a CNM CPM, that is a licensed midwife, and a certified professional midwife. And Jamie, what are you?
I'm a certified nurse midwife. I have a master's degree in nurse midwifery.
So you're going to get a little bit of perspective from both of us today on not only how to become a midwife, but also kind of what opportunities there are in at least our area. We are located in Lafayette, Louisiana. We also call it Acadiana. So we're going to try and be as broad as we can, but keep in mind that your state may have different requirements or regulations for midwifery. So let's get started. I love this story. I want Jamie to tell us a little bit about what made you want to become a midwife.
So I've been a labor and delivery nurse for almost 20 years. And in that time, in that experience, I was able to see things that I just didn't think were going appropriately for the patients. I wanted to advocate more for the patients. They deserve to be treated better. They deserve to make more choices. And in most hospitals, that's really not available, especially here. It's the doctor who makes the calls. Most of the time, most doctors would be like, okay, these are the choices, that they kind of nudge you in the direction of the thing that they want. And unfortunately, a lot of those things tend to be, it just makes it easier for them to do their job. It makes it easier for the nurses to do their job. And they don't take into consideration that that's not what the moms want. So that was my big thing. My goal was to change it from inside the hospital. The hospital that I worked at really didn't want to be changed. So I found Kyra, and she's been a huge inspiration, and I don't think I ever want to go back to a hospital. I think we're going to change the hospitals by putting pressure on them from the outside in, and I think eventually that'll happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And what's really cool, when I met Jamie to interview for the midwife, birth centers were not even on her radar. So she had actually had the opportunity to do part of her apprenticeship, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, in a birth center, and it passed because she was going to be a hospital midwife. And here she is at the birth center, and if you've seen any of her pictures in the birth, like, oh my goodness, you were made for this.
Yes, I'm never going back. This is it.
Yeah.
This is the best thing ever.
So before we jump into CPM, tell us about, okay, so how does one, just the basics first, how does one become a certified nurse midwife?
So I think most midwifery courses that, it's a master's degree or a doctorate. Some of them offer you a straight doctorate, but I'm pretty sure all of them require you to have a bachelor's degree in nursing first. It doesn't matter what kind of nursing. I actually went to school with somebody who had her bachelor's degree, and she was a psych nurse. She had never done labor and delivery ever. And we got our master's degrees together. Now there is a school here in Louisiana. LSU actually offers midwifery, but it's a DNP program. It's a doctorate program. I got my degree from Kentucky in Frontier Nursing University. There's different schools all over the country. They all have different requirements, but I'm pretty sure every one of them requires you to have a bachelor's in nursing first. My degree, my master's degree, was a 2-year program with an extension for a doctorate if you wanted it for an extra year. I think the LSU, the one that they just opened, is just from a bachelor's degree, a bridge to a doctorate in midwifery.
So what is the difference between a certified nurse midwife who has a master's and one that has a doctorate?
A doctorate just gives you a title of a doctor. It's if you wanted to pursue education and educating, you would get paid more with a doctorate.
Is it? Okay, this sounds goofy, but is it doctor midwife? Like, what is it? What do they get called when they walk into a birth room?
Well, most midwives are very personable, and they're just like, call me Jamie.
Okay.
But
I had to ask.
If you're teaching in a college profession, in a college setting, then if you have doctorate, you would be Dr. So-and-so.
Wow.
If you just have your master's, then you would be midwife so-and-so. So that's kind of...
So in physical practice, it's the same, except you can teach. Can you teach with a master's?
You can teach with a master's. You would just get paid less than you would if you had a doctorate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about research? Can you do those with either as well?
You can do research with either as well.
Okay.
And the doctorate, you can have a doctorate for practicing, or you can have a doctorate in education.
So nurse midwives in different states have different rules, right? So in Louisiana, the majority of nurse midwives do practice in the hospital setting. And coming from my perspective, correct me if I'm wrong, it's almost like a mini OB. They can prescribe meds, they can do twin deliveries, y'all can do assist in C-sections, although you're not doing the C-section operation yourself, you're in first assist.
Yes.
But they can also do low risk. So if you're seeing a nurse midwife in the hospital, you can have an epidural and still get that midwifery touch, but correct me if I'm wrong, it's not the model of midwifery that you're going to get from this out-of-hospital setting. It is policy-based most of the time. They have certain policies they have to meet, which may require you to, for lack of a better word, like accept certain interventions that you may not have wanted simply to get a midwife. Now, with the maternity care deserts in the state, I would like to hope that as we continue to train midwives in these new schools coming up, and we put them in the hospitals, that at least women who don't have access to safe OBGYNs necessarily and don't have access even to midwives out of the hospital, birth centers, things like that, hopefully these nurse midwives in the hospital can bridge the gap and try and give a more midwifery model care under whatever policies are being required from the hospital. I mean, that's my hope. I hope that we continue to grow this.
That's the goal.
Don't expect, as you guys probably saw our video recently, don't expect a home birth in the hospital. Even midwives must have they have to meet those policies. You'll have to meet those, requirements. So your midwifery, you said that, so Jamie was a nurse for 17 years before she became a midwife. How did school look like as a CNM while you were a nurse? Were you able to work at the same time?
I was, which is one of the reasons that it took 2 years. I was still working full-time as a labor and delivery nurse while I was getting my master's in midwifery.
So you went to class?
It was, that's the best part. Even if you don't have a school in your state, in your area, the majority of it was online. I had to go to Kentucky. I was supposed to go twice, but I was in school in the middle of COVID, so I went once for an orientation. The second time we went, they created an entire kind of a Facebook community. It was all online, and we all met together for about a week, every day for a week. It was to prepare for clinicals. And then Frontier Nursing University actually found me a preceptor. Some schools you have to find your own preceptor, but Frontier Nursing University found me a preceptor in Baton Rouge, which is about an hour drive from where I live. So even then, while I was doing clinicals, I was still able to work full-time as a labor and delivery nurse.
Yeah, and that definitely is one of the benefits, I think, of the CNM program for sure, because as a CPM, most CPMs actually provide care for free through the majority of their apprenticeship. I apprenticed for, I think, 5 years, and I think I only got paid as a birth assistant for the last handful of births, maybe 2 handfuls. So we'll talk about CPM in a minute and how challenging becoming a CPM can be. But before I do, let's talk about some of the challenges of the CNM program, starting with the cost.
It is expensive. I am in a great deal of debt right now, but I wanted to do it, and it was worth it. And it depends upon the school that you go to. Frontier Nursing University, I owe about $75,000 for my master's degree.
In 2 years?
Yes, in 2 years.
Yeah, and that's not on top of if you're going just to midwifery shortly after nursing school. That's that, piled up on top. So keep that in mind if you're pursuing CNM. It is definitely a master's degree, but it's also got that master's degree fee.
It does.
What about job opportunities? Now, this is Louisiana based. I can't speak for other states. In Louisiana, tell them about the struggles you had trying to find a midwife position here.
So when it was a really hard decision for me to go to school because I'm older, and I turned 55 yesterday. So
happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
That was fun.
So it was really difficult for me to decide to go to school and incur that cost, but I really, really wanted to make the changes. There are 2 major hospitals in this city that have labor and delivery units, and they were not ready to hire certified nurse midwives yet. My husband and I were discussing moving to Texas because Texas really does have a lot of job opportunities for certified nurse midwives. And I was looking in Texas when I found this job opportunity, and I really think that God sent Kyra to me because I really think this is where I belong. Since I've started with Kyra, one of the hospitals has started hiring nurse midwives. So they do have a few opportunities in our area. Baton Rouge has certified nurse midwives. New Orleans has certified nurse midwives. I really think it's just those major cities. But I think, like I said, we're on our way to changing that. Changing that in the state of Louisiana, and especially in our area, it's becoming a little more acceptable because I think the patients are voicing their opinion about how they really want to have more of a voice and how their pregnancy goes, how their labor goes, how their delivery goes. And I think they're realizing that they have that option with a midwife. So I think more OBs are opening their eyes to, maybe we should hire midwives. And the hospitals are starting to think maybe we should hire midwives because it is what the patients want. And that's the goal. That's what we want.
And if you look at the statistics, midwives in the hospital unfortunately have better outcomes than OBs in the hospital as far as infection rates, vaginal delivery, satisfaction with the birth. I mean, midwives make an epic difference no matter where they serve. But unfortunately in Louisiana, as with everything else, we're behind. But I do see now that we have those two schools creating
Yes.
more nurse midwives, I do hope that very, very nearly in the future we're going to be seeing a really positive change.
I hope so.
Is there anything else about the CNM? So first of all, yeah, I forgot. What is your board? How does this process work?
Okay, so once you graduate, you have all the credits and you have your degree, then you have to take a test, and it's actually the same test that you took.
You took the NARM exam?
No, there's two. There's NARM and there's American AACMB.
I didn't take that one. I took NARM.
Okay, so you could take that one too. They actually offer our test to CPMs too. So
Neat.
you have to pass the test. Once you pass the test and you are accredited, you have a certification. Then you have to apply in Louisiana. You have to apply to the State Board of Nursing to get your nurse practitioner's license. You have to have a collaborative physician, and you have to have a prescriptive authority. So those are the three things. Once you get your degree, you have to take the test. You become certified. Once you're certified in Louisiana, then you address it with the Board of Nursing, and then you can practice in the state of Louisiana. So it could be different in every other state. But like I said, here we are required to have a collaborative physician. I think in Texas that's not required. I think in California that might not be required. But in Louisiana you do have to have a collaborative physician.
And so behind the scenes, what that means is for Jamie to practice as a midwife and no longer a nurse, she has to have a doctor write and support her through this process, which is really unfortunate considering Louisiana, as we said, is behind, right?
Yes.
So to find a physician to do that is a little challenging. And then, and I'm not going to say who, but somebody actually told Jamie that she might actually steal their patients as an OB. So getting that collaborative physician is another extra step that you have to consider is, do you have support in your area? I believe it wouldn't be too difficult to get a collaborative OB to let you work in their clinic, but to go out and deliver babies, that is definitely a challenge. So we are so blessed to have Dr. Damon Cudahy next door at Acadiana OBGYN, being our collaborative physician for Jamie and our medical director here at the Natural Birth House.
He's so supportive of natural birth, and you have to find somebody who really agrees with it and believes in it the same way that you do to get a really, really good supportive collaborative physician, and we were so lucky to have him.
Yeah,
He's amazing.
he really is. Okay, anything else about CNM that you think that somebody who's not familiar with it would want to know before we jump into what a CPM is?
So again, if you're going to incur that much debt, make sure that it's something that you really want to do. Make sure that it's something that you're passionate about. Depending on where you're at is going to determine how much money you make and how you do this. I have to say I never want to go back into a hospital again to deliver in a hospital again, because the freedom of the birth center for the patients, without the policies and procedures that restrict me as a midwife, I would not be able to practice to my full capacity in a hospital because of those policies and procedures. As opposed to here, it's the patient's choice. If you want to do this, we can do, as long as it's safe for you and the baby, and we're going to have a good outcome, then we can do it however you want it, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
But make sure that it's something that you're passionate about before you incur that expense, because the master's degree can put you in debt.
Yeah, and also think about where you want to practice. If you're the kind of person who has a lifestyle that you need like a 12-hour shift or a 24-hour shift, and you need health insurance consistently provided by an employer, and you want someone to pay your malpractice, and you're willing to work under those policies, CNM, there's a lot of opportunity there for a more sustainable midwifery practice, whereas we're going to jump into CPM and talk a little bit about that and how that definitely has its own challenges. So I am a CPM. I'm certified Professional Midwife by the organization called NARM, N-A-R-M, that's North American Registry of Midwives. Basically, it is a national certification. That means that I've met certain requirements to practice as a midwife with the term midwife, and Louisiana gave me the LM to practice underneath their policies, or we call them rules. Those rules vary from state to state. Some places CPM is actually still illegal or illegal. In fact, I believe Alabama just got midwifery legalized. And I believe, quote me, don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's still illegal in Mississippi, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're working on it, but I might be a little outdated in that. If I'm incorrect, let me know in the comments below, and while we're chatting, I'm going to correct that out loud. So CPMs, we specialize in out-of-hospital, normal birth, normal midwifery, and are trained to identify variations of normal. So where the CNM can work with higher risk patients in the hospital setting where they should be. We only deal with low risk, acknowledge when someone risked out of our practice and needs to go over to the hospital for that higher level of care. The term lay midwife is not appropriate for a CPM. Lay midwife, if you've heard that in the community, that means we are unlicensed, untrained. Like my great-great-grandmother was a lay midwife. She had 8 babies in Arnaville, so they were just like, well, you've delivered 8 babies, come over and deliver my babies. And she became the lay midwife of the Arnaville community. That's not me. I am a professional licensed by the Louisiana State Board of Medical Examiners. So she's licensed by the Board of Nursing.
Board of Nursing, yes.
We're licensed by the Louisiana State Board of Medical Examiners, which is the same board that licenses OBGYNs. So you can imagine that our rules are very strict and particular to make sure we are providing safe practice for low-risk healthy women delivering out of the hospital. Both sets of midwives provide lab work, ultrasounds, physician consults as needed. CNMs can write prescriptions. CPMs can administer prescriptions for emergencies in labor. She can too, but she can also write them in pregnancy. CPMs have a variety of different ways to get in. I'm going to list the most common. The first one is the apprenticeship only model. So you've been hearing us toss around this word apprenticeship and preceptor and collaborative physician, right? Apprenticeship is back in the day when midwife students would follow around a midwife and gain these skills so that they would be safe to practice. That is the apprenticeship only model, and it's still a thing. There's also the MEAC model, M-E-A-C, Midwifery Education Accreditation Council, I believe. This is the schooling that provides not certification, educational component of midwifery. You can get an associate's. You can get a certificate of midwifery, an associate's, a bachelor's, and a master's in midwifery in CPM modeled midwifery. And if I'm not mistaken, because I looked into it before I met you, I believe that you can bridge your bachelor's of midwifery that I would get into a CNM.
Oh, that's awesome.
There's some kind of a bridge where you can become a CNM through a MEAC accredited school as a Bachelor's of Science in Midwifery.
Is that online also?
That is online, yes.
Amen.
Yeah. So actually, when I started midwifery, 15 years ago, school was not a popular thing, and I got a lot of flack about it. Midwifery school was like a faux pas. This is an apprenticeship-only model, and I went anyway because I knew that as things were going to progress for midwifery to become more acknowledgeable, more accepted
in the medical community,
we were going to have to get educated. We were going to have to meet standards. Not that apprentices don't, right? They do meet standards, but they are missing a level of that formal education. And I definitely, after attending 400 deliveries, running a birth center, working with CNMs, all the things that we've done, I guarantee you, you will learn stuff in your educational component that you were told you will never see in your practice, and you will absolutely see it. You will see it. So keep that in mind. This isn't the kind of profession anymore. Back in the day when women have babies and go home, the diets have changed, the health statuses have changed, things have changed. And women aren't in the exact same health status as they were back in the day. Some better.
Yes.
Some worse. So you should be prepared to see everything. Am I right?
Yes.
Everything. Our first couple of births together, we had like a hemorrhage, and I mean, we were just jumping in.
Yeah.
So I really do, as you can probably tell, recommend the educational component. There are some non-MEAC accredited schools that you can participate in, and the cost is better for those as well, where you would do these non-MEAC accredited schools, but still do the apprenticeship model. I did both. I had an online school like you, and an apprenticeship. It took me 5 years to get my numbers back in the day. With the volume that many midwives have since COVID, because midwifery has blown up all over the country, you could probably get it done in 2 or 3 years, depending on where you're practicing. We also specialize in home birth and birth centers. We can work in clinics. I worked in Dr. Cudahy's office as his staff midwife for a few years. You can work in clinics, but we really specialize in out-of-hospital birth, and it would be a wild thought to think that CPMs would ever get credentialed in the hospital because there's such a volatile environment for midwives, right?
There is. Like I said, I had a hard time getting some OBs to accept a certified nurse midwife in the hospital. It was a fight, and it happened after I left. So, the doctors do not want to accept it. They really don't, especially here. Now, again, that's just here. In Texas and California and other states, from what I've heard, the doctors are really appreciative of those midwives, because if a midwife is taking care of these patients, these low-risk patients, that frees up the doctor's time to take care of the high-risk patients. And that's who he should be spending time with. That's who all the OBs should be spending their time with, is the high-risk patients.
That's what they specialize in.
Exactly.
Like what we do in clinic is we sit around for these hour-long appointments and we get to know our clients, and they cry on our shoulder, and we talk about life and midwifery and health, right? That is not the best use of a physician's expertise. Like, don't get me wrong, everyone wants to connect with their physician, but what about those high-risk patients who need him? Let him free up his time to serve those people, and that's where midwives really can come in.
And the doctors, the OBs that do support midwives recognize that. They really do.
Yeah. Did I tell? Oh, financially. So CNM midwifery is definitely much more expensive than CPM midwifery, except for one part, right? The educational component. I looked this morning. I saw that some of the MIG schools were about $36,000 in 2 or 3 years. But you could, that's not too bad. Yeah. And they have distance education as well. But most midwives do not provide stipends financially for their CPM students who serve for free through their apprenticeship. We do. Once our students are prepared enough to act as a birth assistant, we actually pay them a birth assist fee. But many midwifery practices don't, and in fact, I've heard the opposite. I recently met an apprentice who the midwife charged her to be a part of her practice. So you need to keep that in mind. You can travel for your education, things like that, but you need to keep that in mind, is how long is it going to take you to get your numbers, and what's the finances going to look like? Because most midwives are moms like me and like you. And do you need childcare? Do you have reliable childcare to be running out to births? These births are not scheduled. You don't get 12-hour scheduled shifts as an apprentice in most places. You actually have to be on call 24/7 through your entire apprenticeship to get you to where you're going and get you the skills that you need. Which, let's just admit, is our real life practice here. Even as a team, we're pretty much on call all the time.
Yeah. If I were to get sick, even if it's my turn to be on call, if I were to get sick, then Kyra would step in and vice versa.
Yeah.
So we're here all the time.
So did I miss anything before? If you guys have questions, you can post them in the comments below. But did we tap on everything CPM-wise?
So.
What about misconceptions? Because you worked in the hospital, right?
Yes.
What about misconceptions about CPMs?
So here in Louisiana, there were several misconceptions about CPMs. Again, the doctors were not, they're not supportive, most of them. They really weren't, and they saw CPM. So that's another reason why the education route would be better. Because if you have an education and you're certified, and again, through the board of
Louisiana State Board of Medical Examiners.
Exactly. It's the same board that certifies doctors. So if you have that certification, then right there you're going to gain a whole lot more respect from the nurses in the hospital, the doctors in the hospital, the patients who are actually paying attention to that sort of thing. And they're going to listen to what you have to say more than if you come in and you don't have that certification, you don't have that education. They're not going to respect what you have to say. They're not going to listen to what you have to say. So we're working on that too. The fact, I think, that we're teamed up, I know most of the OBs in this town, and the fact that we have teamed up, I think, has helped their perception of CPMs a whole lot, because I know them, they know me, and there's a mutual respect there because I worked with them for almost 20 years. So I think a lot of the physicians, one physician recently approached her.
Shook my hand.
and she's never had that happen. And this is a physician that I know well, and he and I have a mutual respect, and I think that was part of it. If I respect her enough to work with her, and I've been here for over a year now.
It's almost 2 years.
Yeah, then maybe it's worth looking into, and maybe he should stop listening to the naysayers, the OBs that are like, oh no, midwives don't know what they're doing. Because here we are, and we're successful, and we've grown so much over the past 2 years, exponentially.
To put that in perspective, this same doctor a decade ago, when I brought in a transfer, told the client he couldn't believe that she ever paid me because I'm a con artist.
Yeah.
So now he walked up to me and shook my hand. It's like, hey, midwife, how are you? And it was really wonderful.
Yeah.
And there are going to be some potential or current apprentices here watching this who are not going to agree with Jamie and my perspective of the education model. And I do want to say this. One thing that Jamie and I do so well together is we have a vision. We have a vision for where midwifery in Lafayette and Louisiana needs to go. And part of that vision requires us to bridge the gap with these hospitals and these OBs. And by doing that, we have to express education, professionalism. We have to bring clients in appropriately and risk our clients out appropriately. All midwives, I believe, have the heart of doing this. But I'm sure there are going to be some things that we have said that are going to trigger some of you and you don't agree with it. I want you to keep in mind, our vision may not be like your vision. Many midwives I've met just want to serve mamas and go home, and that's beautiful and wonderful. But Jamie and I are trying to change a birth culture, and it's working, y'all. Last month, we normally have 8 consults. We have 24. I mean, we're really growing. Women are becoming more accepting. Midwives are becoming more accepting of birth centers. And so we are, and home birth, of course, too. So we have a vision, and so I don't see any questions. I think we're good. Yeah. If you guys have questions, we'll be logging on throughout the day. You can post them in the comments, and we'll answer them. But otherwise, thanks for being with us today. If you're looking forward to being a midwife, it's going to be a hard road, but if God's calling you, it's worth it. Go for it.
It is. It's a passion, and if you're passionate about it, you're going to love it when you do it.
Yeah, it never feels like work, even when it's hard.
Yeah, even when it's hard.
Yeah.
It's fulfilling, and it's rewarding.
Yeah.
It is.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, thanks for watching, you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.